Good morning, good morning, good morning. 3 top tips on what to do if your number stays exactly the same when you are tapping. Tip number 1. When you're tapping, and whether you're working on a belief or an emotion, generally what you're looking to have happen is before you start, you give that belief the intensity of the emotion or the truth of that belief a number 1 to 10, where 10 is really, really intense or really, really true. And the goal is to, with tapping, bring the number down from really high down to something ideally 2 or lower. But sometimes when you've done some tapping on whatever the issue is and you check in with yourself, the number stays exactly the same. Nothing changes. So, your first inclination is to go, ugh, doesn't work. Or your little inner voice is going to come up and tell you how you've done it wrong. You're not good enough. Whatever it might be. Maybe it's a combination of the two if you're really going to go for it. I'm going to invite you to resist doing that. So I'm just leaning over to plunge my coffee. I'm plunging. I'm going to invite you to resist throwing your hands up in despair. And instead, the first thing you're going to do is you are going to go, that's interesting. That is really interesting. I wonder why my number hasn't moved. Start to get curious in a very non-judgmental way. So that's the first thing you're going to do. You're going to take a step back. You're going to detach yourself from self-judgment and resistance. You're going to take a step back and you're going to get curious. Because whatever happens with your number is an indicator. It's a clue. If your number drops, then the indicator is you are headed in the right direction. Congratulations, carry on. If your number stays the same, it's an indicator that you're either a little bit off the mark or there is something actively blocking you from releasing this. So, tip 1, take a emotional step back, even a physical step back. Detach yourself from the self-judgment, detach yourself from the this doesn't work ism, and get curious. Ask yourself, I wonder why my number hasn't shifted. Tip number 2, I'd like you to have a think about the downside to letting the number drop. When our numbers don't drop, it could be that we're not getting specific enough. But a lot of the time, in my experience and working with many, many, many clients and working with myself, the main one is that there is some kind of perceived downside to letting that intensity lower or releasing the truth, in inverted commas, of that belief. So if you're working with an emotion, and I'll give you an example because this is particularly prevalent when you are tapping for anger. And the reasoning behind, or your subconscious's reasoning behind not letting the number move and lower, is that when we are angry, it is because we have witnessed or been involved in something that we perceive as unfair or unjust. So we get angry, either on behalf of ourselves or on behalf of someone else. So when you are tapping to decrease the intensity of the anger, there is a little part of you that says, well, hang on a sec. I need to be angry about this. What just happened was really friggin' unfair. And I can't let this anger go, because if I let this anger go, am I condoning what has just happened? So you will actively resist letting that number drop. So the tip here is to address that head on with your tapping. Even though I can't let this anger go, because if I do, I'm condoning what happened, and I don't. I choose to love and accept myself anyway. That is your setup statement. Then when you move into the round, you talk to yourself about why you can't let the anger go. And by addressing it head on like that, by as-ising it, you are acknowledging that part of you, and it feels heard and it feels seen, and as a result it starts to go, okay, maybe we could let it go a little bit. And I usually find that a really good statement to weave into your tapping here is, I don't have to let it go. I give myself permission to hang on to this anger. And relax into it. Be open to the possibility that you are allowed to feel angry. Give yourself permission to feel it. And then see what happens with your number. Tip number 3. Inside all of us, and this kind of, tip number 2 kind of morphs into this. Inside all of us, there is a stroppy teenager who does not like to be told what to do. He or she is not going to be told what to do. They are not going to tidy their room. You're not the boss of me. And it ties in really neatly with that second tip. It's very closely linked. So if your number isn't dropping and you've tried something around looking for a perceived downside to letting it drop and still nothing has come up, get a bit silly with your tapping. Allow your inner teenager, put my mug down for this, allow your inner teenager to come out. I won't let this number come down. You can't tell me what to do. You're not the boss of me. You don't understand. You know nothing. If you have a teenager, this should be fairly easy. Because it's something you probably hear on a regular basis. If you don't have a teenager, we were all teenagers once. We might have tried to forget that era. But you can kind of remember what it felt like, all the angst, all the unfairness. So have a little play with it. Get silly with it. You can't make me what to do. I won't let this emotion come down. I won't let go of this belief because the sky is blue. I won't let go of it because I have hair on my head. I won't let go of it because Helen's just joined the live. Hi, Helen. I won't let go of it because I have 2 legs. Get really friggin' ridiculous with it. To the point where your subconscious is going to go, oh, this is just a bit silly. It's just a bit silly. Okay, let's see what we can do here. And then once again, checking on your number. So to recap, tip number 1, when your number doesn't shift when you're tapping. Tip number 1, take a step back. Employ detached curiosity. Detach from the temptation to judge yourself and what you're doing, and from throwing your hands up in the air and going, this doesn't work. So that's tip number 1. Detach yourself, get curious, ask a curious question. That's curious. It's curious. I love the word curious. I wonder why my number's not shifting. If I knew why that was, I wonder what I would say to myself. Tip number 2, look for a perceived downside in letting your number shift. So that might be if you're feeling angry, that if you let the number drop, it means you condone what happened. It might be if you're working on a belief, it might be that if you let go of the truth of this belief, you're going to have to take a scary action. Tip number 3, make contact with and embrace your inner teen and get a little bit ridiculous with your tapping. Come up with some really ridiculous reasons why you can't let whatever it is go. Channel your inner teen with the whole, you're not the boss of me, you can't make me, I refuse to do it. Ugh. Good times. So have a little play with that. Next time you do some tapping and a number doesn't drop, have a little play. If you've got any questions on that, please feel free to drop me a comment. If you've got anything to add, any other helpful tips and advice, please feel free to add that too. And have a lovely rest of your Friday. I'll see you soon. Toodles!